Pretty cool sidearm you got there. What is it?
I don't know what it's called. I just know the sound it makes when it takes a man's life.
Yeah, hello and welcome to the podcast. Today's topic, or episode, I suppose, has been inspired a lot by, there was a recent topic I saw on Reddit where they were like going, I think it came up a few times actually, where people were saying Tropic Thunder was probably one of the last best comedy movies ever made.
The last of its genre anyway, I suppose, for sure.
But I don't know if I'd agree with that even, because like I'm fairly sure Anchorman 2 and a lot of those films came afterwards.
They weren't as successful. They weren't the last
But you
good
don't kind of like, associate success with things being good. Like look at Freddy Got Fingered. Freddy Got Fingered, I think, is probably one of the best comedy movies ever.
Of all time.
Yeah.
Of all time.
Yeah, and Young Frankenstein is fantastic. How many people nowadays under the age of 30?
How old is the film like?
A few years old.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Probably like us being expecting us to know stuff from like the 50s.
Well, you should.
Yeah, well, we might do, but the older generation, I don't think are bothered.
If they're fucking movie fans like they claim to be, they should. And if not, well, I don't want to have anything to do with them.
You don't anyway.
But there's quite a lot of people saying, and being honest, it's not a film that I'd hold in high regard.
Yeah, it's not something I'd be kind of like, oh, can't wait to watch that, or something that'd be. It's not as imminently quotable, I don't think, as the likes of an Anchorman.
I think it was probably kind of the end of Ben Stiller's run of good comedies. Being honest, if that was, I don't know. I think
he hasn't
kind
come
of
out with an awful lot since then.
Yeah, now he has been very sick.
Yeah.
There was a whole thing. I can't remember what it was, but he was very sick for a long time. But I mean, you had like say Meet the Fockers and all that, which I think were shit anyway. But it's
I enjoyed those
stuff like Dodgeball and all those films that kind of made And then I think after Tropic Thunder, it kind of fell off. I kind of think Tropic Thunder was aimed more at say the populace. There was a lot of stuff even like with Tom Cruise doing the dance in it where it's like, oh look, it's Tom Cruise in a fat suit. Oh, it is funny. The thing that they're mocking at the start is what they did, like where they're going, oh look at Jack Black's character. It was fucking Eddie Murphy and was it Meet the Clumps or the Fat Professor or something like that.
Professor,
yeah. And that's exactly what they did.
Put a bald cap and terrible moustache, and that's the thing. I was like, oh, and he's fat suit, and I was like looking at him, I was like, he just looks like a normal person. How skinny was he?
He wasn't. That was the thing. It's not like it wasn't overstated.
Yeah, it's not like a grotesque kind of like. What was Jack Black's fat suit thing? You remember Shadow Hal, wasn't it? That was Gwyneth Paltrow. Do you remember?
Oh yeah. Was Jack Black in that?
I'm nearly sure that was him. Yeah.
Wasn't George Costanza in that?
I don't know. I've never actually seen it.
We saw it once.
No, I don't.
He had the tail.
What?
Yeah, I remember he had the tail, like a dog's tail.
No.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not like tripping balls or something?
No, Shadow Hal. No, we had. Yeah.
Okay. It's another film I need to rewatch then.
That was terrible as well. I think that was like the downfall of the Farrellys as well. You know, a lot of people say, oh, the Farrellys, they got cancelled for this or that. And it's not, they just made like a series of really bad movies. There was that, it was like movie 41 or 42 or something like that. Remember with all the sketches in it?
No.
It was terrible. It was like, you know the way that there was all these rip-offs of Scary Movie and all that, like that were just awful. It was nearly like one of those. It was just really bad.
That sounds bad. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it was bad. But like I don't know. I kind of with Tropic Thunder, it just felt like C-tier comedy to me, where it was like, I think we looked at it once, maybe twice, and had no interest in going back looking at it. And then it's just, there was some of the stuff like The Office. First time around looking at The Office, I thought The Office was overly schmaltzy. Probably looked at it about 10 fucking times back to back.
It, yeah.
And looking back at some of the stuff, you go, oh, this could never get made today. But with Tropic Thunder, you do have that thing with the blackface stuff in it.
Oh God, yeah.
And where they're calling like with the Simple Jack.
Yeah.
And then you can't go full retard thing, and you kind of go, oh God, like you'd never get away with that today. You would.
I don't. Well, you might, but your film would get cancelled. I think fairly.
At that
fairly
level,
fucking quickly.
I think, yeah, you probably would. There's loads of stuff. It's how it's done. Because like it is the thing. I would agree. Ben Stiller came out and he was saying like, look, because they were getting massive complaints about the Simple Jack thing, and he was saying we're not actually making fun of intellectually challenged people or anything like that. We're making fun of the actors doing these
it's
things.
like, I'll do my Oscar grab and, this is the way to do it kind of a thing.
Yeah, and like, I mean, even with the blackface thing, I think there is part of that where it's like, you could see some actors back a while ago, because the whole idea for Tropic Thunder apparently came around when Ben Stiller, for people who don't know, he was one of his first acting gigs was on Empire of the Sun. And he heard all these actors coming out from it saying, oh, we were in boot camp for like a couple of weeks and it was the hardest point of my life, and they all had like PTSD from it and all this shit, and he just thought it was really pompous and hilarious that they compared themselves to real soldiers after doing like a week in a boot camp training. So that's where the idea for Tropic Thunder came from. And then obviously the different characters were based on different actors and stuff. But where was I going with it? They had a different point to make.
And you meandered off topic.
I meandered off topic, yeah. But yeah, like so it's all with the blackface thing. But I think that I don't know where we're going. But like I think Always Sunny in Philadelphia handled it an awful lot better with the Lethal Weapon thing, taking the piss out of people that would think that it's okay to do blackface.
Yeah.
And that got taken down off Netflix, whereas I don't think that should have got. I thought that's actually it makes better commentary about the whole thing than Tropic Thunder does.
No, I don't know. Looking back on Tropic Thunder, I think it would kind of hold up today as a commentary on today, because you obviously have Robert Downey Jr. as this pompous, Australian actor who's like held in high regard, and he decides to get his pigment changing surgery so he can play a black character. But there's a bit in it where it's kind of like Ben Stiller says something like, oh, I don't know what's up with you people, and he's like, you people, and there's an actual black guy there and he's like, what do you mean, you people? And it's this whole thing of like sort of the white saviour getting offended on behalf of minority groups.
You do have a lot of that going on as well, don't you? All these white knights online.
That's what I mean. You get a lot of people they're like, oh, you can't do that and that's cultural appropriation, you can't say that. And then you've got people who are actually in the groups that are being spoken about going, excuse me, don't fucking, you're actually being even worse because you're like, you're speaking for me without actually asking me.
It is. It's that kind of like, I mean, I don't read up on race stuff. I don't. It's like I've too many interests. I don't mean it like I've no interest in it. It's like I'm too busy reading Warhammer stuff to go. Like I've got a couple of books on like Black history and stuff, which I think is interesting because I think, to a certain degree, Black history, African American history mirrors Irish history to a certain point. We've more in common than we have not in common.
Yeah.
I think with things, but like people might realise that over in America.
And as well, I think Black history is not really taught all that much over this side of
it's not in Ireland
the Atlantic. Do you know what I mean? It's like obviously people are aware of sort of the American Civil War and the War of Independence and slavery and all that.
But even
it's
with that,
really,
I don't remember doing much about American history in school.
Even just going back to our history syllabus, it was you had a choice between you could either do the French Revolution or the American one. Yeah. And like our school just automatically taught the French Revolution, and I was like, but I'm interested in learning about the other one. So me being me, I was like, I'm going to learn about the American one. So, and I tried to teach myself that particular syllabus and failed miserably.
I failed everything.
Well, no, actually, I did okay now, but you know what I mean? I didn't get the same support as I would have if this teacher was doing.
It might be different nowadays, but like as well, when we were doing it, it's like the first part of your, I suppose with high school over in America, it's all ancient history. So there was a big focus on the Celts, Egypt, and
ancient Greece, Rome, that kind of stuff.
And then like when you're doing your leaving cert, which would be just before you go to college or university, it's more focused on World War II, really.
World War I and World War II.
Yeah, and then there's whereas like there used to be just one chapter for like
Europe.
after that. Whereas like 60 years was like just like one chapter.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So yeah, there was very little. Like I definitely don't think we learned anything about the civil rights movement when we were in school at all.
We would have been vaguely aware of Martin Luther King and a little bit.
Very
have a dream speech and that's it.
But yeah, so a lot of it you would have to go, and as well, it's just a thing as well. If you get like, well, I don't think it's too much different. If you go into an Irish bookstore, it's probably the same in any country you go into. The books that are going to sell the most in history are going to be about their own history. So a lot of times it's like stuff about Irish history and like the rebellion and the IRA and all that stuff. Where it used to be very hard, and like I mean, this would probably sound really bad. I don't mean it to sound bad, but like I used to be really big. Well, I still am. I love hip hop. Like I really like hip hop. So I've always had an interest in African American
culture.
Yeah. But I could never get books on it.
Yeah.
And even nowadays, even like I've got a couple of hip hop books, but like some of the hip hop books that are out there, they don't really.
Yeah, don't
deal with the culture.
Yeah, they don't dive too much into the background or anything like that.
With it, but we're really gone off topic.
Yeah,
now.
but that's what I mean. It's like I think like a film like that wouldn't get made nowadays, but I think actually an awful lot of the stuff that they're pointing at and kind of making a bit of a not a mockery but a commentary of it would hold up very true today, because you have the whole thing of like, you know, well, you're speaking for me and you're sort of, that's a double kind of a fucking pushing the boot down. Not only is somebody else doing something, but you're taking my voice away from me and you're saying what I should be feeling. It's like, no.
Well, as well, I think why it probably wouldn't get made today as well is there doesn't seem to be as much stuff about actors being pompous, because I think PR agents are after getting a lot better at kind of like that. They realise, right, people don't really like this fucking
arrogant
and being told, people spouting at it, because the whole thing with George Clooney and I remember years ago South Park were taking the piss out of it, where it was like the smoke cloud,
absolutely
where I think it all kind of stopped, and now it's just really superficial stuff with actors.
I do. It's a lot better managed, because I mean, you had the likes years ago, like speaking of Australian actors, you had Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe was the big one,
the big reputation and sort of like, you know,
Daniel Day-Lewis,
fighting and stuff like that, you know.
Daniel Day-Lewis for My Left Foot, and you know, so they were taking a bit, films. And all these people, they were like guaranteed Oscar winners. Meryl Streep, sure, fucking. I don't think I've ever really seen a film with Meryl Streep.
It just don't interest me. But that's the thing. It's all this like, oh, this is going to be my Oscar film. This is the one I'm going to get it for. And so I'm going to do a kind of a hard hitting topic, and they had it lined up against other, like even with the whole thing, where so you know the what was it, Simple Sam. What? Simple Jack, sorry, yeah.
And there was quite a lot of films like that, like even Forrest Gump.
That's it, they even referred to it in it, like, you know, when Robert Downey Jr.'s character was going through it, he's like, well, he said, yeah, okay, you've got like Forrest Gump, but you know, it was like he was still able to do this. He just had braces on his leg and he was a bit slow, and there's a load of other people he kind of referenced, you know, and then he was like, the only other one was like was it I Am Sam, it was Sean Penn, was it?
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah, but that was, you know, sort of, there's all these people, they do that Oscar thing.
What was the one with Johnny Depp in it? Benny and June,
Benny and June, and I actually loved that film, but
that was quite a good portrayal, wasn't it? Did they married in it or something like that?
Yeah, it was basically.
I remember it, but like, I don't remember it.
It was never explicitly said that they were, you know, sort of they had difficulties or anything like that, but it was just, you know, sort of they had their own family members looking after them. The two main characters are starting to fall for each other. Family members are just concerned and like making sure that, oh my God, you know, you're not kind of going to take advantage of my daughter, or, you know, telling their boy, you be careful. It was actually a kind of course, I could go back and look at it now, because it's been like about fucking 20 years since I saw it, and go, oh my God, this is horrific. But I seem to remember at the time it was actually portrayed quite nicely and quite sweetly. I really enjoyed it. Like,
it's kind of a cult movie. You know? I remember, like, it wouldn't have been my kind of, because I was big into Mad Max when that one came out. But I seem to remember a lot of people that I knew really like, and they had a very soft spot for it. Like, but just that you don't hear people really talking about it.
No, it didn't seem to be a big thing. The only reason like I kind of enjoyed it so much was at one stage it was the only VHS tape I had. So it was just like,
Die Hard.
Pretty much, yeah. So I was like, I guess I put it on every Friday night, and that was why I watched that one so much. But that wasn't true choice, if you know what I mean. But there was there's a lot of these other kind of worthy films, like you said, Daniel Day-Lewis, My Left Foot, and you have all these like topic films, I suppose, as well, where it's like, oh, I'm going to do my period piece now, or I'm going to do my Vietnam War piece, and well, and of course it had the reference of that.
At one stage as well, there was that whole thing with where they'd have a female actress, well, obviously a female actress, but that if they wanted to win an Oscar was like, oh, just make them put on like ugly makeup.
Yeah,
so there was the whole thing like with Charlize Theron playing a monster, and there was something else with someone who had a big. I can't remember all the one, but there was that whole cliche, and it was true. Yeah. That's like the Oscars are a fucking joke anyway.
It is, or like, oh, just put somebody like able-bodied into a wheelchair or something like that, and all of a sudden, like Born on the 4th of July kind of a thing, And I was like, oh my God, that was Tom Cruise.
Yeah, but like, that film is actually really good. But like, say some of those movies as well, when you look back at them, that people might go, oh, they're inappropriate, or they're like all these things you have to think of as well, that there are stepping stones along the way. If people weren't making movies like those as well at the time to represent people that were differently abled or different races, like I think there's a remake of The Colour Purple out now, and I never saw it because it was like so poorly marketed when I was a kid. I think it probably came out when I was 4 or 5. It was probably marketed with E.T. and stuff, so with a young mind it got jumbled, so I thought it was this weird alien movie. And I really liked Whoopi Goldberg at the time. Like, people who were probably younger wouldn't realise how big a deal Whoopi Goldberg was in the 80s and the 90s. She was like in a lot of family movies and a lot of comedies. I remember Jumpin' Jack Flash, I think was one of the four. And she was just very different. There was something cool about her.
Oh yeah, she was very cool.
And Sister Act, I think, was probably the one that made her kind of really mainstream. And
wasn't she in Ghost as well?
Well, yeah, I forgot she was in Ghost. But Whoopi Goldberg was big deal.
Yeah.
But
where are you going with that? Colour Purple?
The Colour Purple. But without all these movies, that they were like stepping stones for people.
Yeah, you would have been stuck forever in like period pieces or like Hammer Horror or something like that. You had to have films that we're going to tackle this issue. It's going to open up a bit of public dialogue, and things will move forward a little bit more.
But as well for realistic portrayals of people in it. Like, what was that thing? Rocky Mask.
Oh God,
with Rocky in it. Like that was a real disease. Cher, I think, was in it, wasn't it? Was Eric Stoltz played him, and I don't think that was really Oscar bait or anything, because I think it was a small movie at the time, but that definitely opened up the door for people to do more movies like that.
Yeah. But not just your stereotypical, like, say, high action kind of movies or anything like that.
But like, I mean, I've worked with people with the different intellectual abilities, I suppose, if that's the right way to, and one of the ones I think was probably closer than any of it is The Ringer.
Yeah.
Like, it fucking, like, I think people need to be portrayed probably not in this kind of like, oh, poor me thing or anything like that, because they're just...
That's the thing. It's like if that's the whole thing. Like it comes back to this whole thing of like, people say, this particular group, like they're all this or they're all that or they're all the other. No, they're not. There might be a few assholes in that group. There might be a few good people in that group. There might be a few people that are very worthy, but there's equally shits in that group as well. And that goes for any group across society or history.
But as well,
people always have this thing of like anyone who has any kind of an intellectual difficulty. Oh, they're saints, they're angels. They can't do wrong. They can't do this and all this kind of stuff.
I can say that for a fact.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But The Ringer was just like, it was like these guys just being normal and being hilarious and being funny and being crude and doing exactly what everybody else does.
I think people get it mixed up in their head with stuff where it's like they'll shout at like deaf people or blind people or people in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
It's people that just don't know how to process it. So people think that when people have intellectual disabilities or say they have some kind of mental thing, that they're stupid in some way, and it's like, it's not. They might have learning difficulties, so they mightn't be able to process learning something at the same rate that you can, but it doesn't mean that they're fucking stupid. That they can be just probably smarter than you in a lot of ways.
This is it's true, and a lot of it is like, as I said, processing things in a different way, and that's just, there's nothing wrong with that.
No. But like, it's like, I could fucking tell loads of stories, but like, there was I used to work with people with mental health difficulties at one point, and they used to always try and some of the lads used to find it funny, and they'd play up on it when people would know that they were, say, with a certain group, because people had kind of talked down to them as if they were
children almost.
And it's like, this guy's got a fucking master's. fucking kind of like, chemistry. You're talking just because he's got like a mental. It's just people. And people don't mean harm by it.
That's what they think they're being nice or whatever. Like
So I suppose that's what we were talking about the whole blackface thing with Robert Downey Jr. with that, and that's the whole thing. They didn't mean offence by it. I think that's the difference, I think, as well with some things nowadays.
It's the intent,
it's the intent. People get offended by certain things, whereas if they had it and they were using like the hard N-word and he was like really playing up to, or they were doing like fucking Song of the South type shit, then you kind of go, fucking hell. They're mocking black people there.
Yeah, but that's it. The fact that they had the other black character in it as well, who was calling him out on the thing, like he was sort of, he had his, I suppose, his character going on, and he was like, oh Lord, yes, that's the way we all talk, isn't it? Oh yeah, this kind of like mad southern accent. And, you had somebody there the whole time pointing out how ridiculous this was and how, sort of infuriating it was that people assume that everybody is the same in that particular group. So I think it was a nice way, I suppose, of addressing all of this. But I think nowadays people don't see nuance. They don't see the intent. They don't see the commentary that's going on behind things, and they just go, "Oh my God, he's in blackface."
But they don't watch, and it's like something I think with what was the name of the guy that was in fucking Ink Master? He ended up getting fired from
because big moustache. I can't remember.
Oliver. Oliver Peck. Yeah,
there we go.
But he got fired off of Ink Master, and basically at Ink Master just stopping for a long time because there was a picture of him going where he dressed up as Halloween as Magic Jordan or Michael Johnson or something. It was a basketball player, and he was in like full black thing. Now, I know you should, years ago, this is when people say, well, I don't ever remember it being acceptable. Even when we were younger, going back 40 years.
Yeah, people are aware that the black and white minstrels are not a good thing.
Yeah, it was not something that you'd see on television. Definitely not over here, anyway. Yeah. So if you saw someone doing it, you'd be kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? This is, it's not...
Yeah, not ideal.
It was always kind of offensive, And there was a whole thing. We would have been young when, or probably going into teenagers, where I don't know if people that are listening, or if there was a thing called Noddy, where it's like a children's book, and
Enid Blyton book.
Yeah, and in it there is I don't know how you describe them. There are things called gollywogs that were basically black people. There's no, and they robbed Noddy and bet him up and did it, but they looked like black and white minstrels. So when we were
I never actually read the Noddy books. Were they actual gollywogs in it?
They were the gollywogs. Yeah, there was a whole thing where Noddy and Big Ears got their car robbed by a group of gollywogs.
Well, of course, the history of gollywogs itself is, in today's parlance, super problematic. That's the whole idea.
But it's the same conversation's been going on for years when people are going on about woke, and when people turn around and they said, look, you have to take this shit out of the book, it's fucking super offensive. It's horrendously offensive. There's all the people, oh, that's part of our culture, that's part of our history you leave in, people don't take offence to the gollywogs, and it was like, fucking get rid of it.
Yeah. There's some things don't need to be preserved,
It's terrifying and it's super. You would have to be a lunatic not to think that it could be offensive to anyone. And there was no point to it other than being offensive to a race of people. But at the time there was fucking arguments, it was all over the news about it, saying, it's what it used to be instead of woke culture, it used to be called political correctness. So in the 80s what you used to hear the whole time was it's political correctness gone mad.
Gone mad.
Yeah. Over on this side of the world, there was it was England. It wasn't really Ireland, because it was they'd be making jokes about Irish people. There was a whole kind of no blacks, no Irish.
Yeah, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, and fucking throwing a paddy and having a paddy
and they said so, but it somehow it's okay kind of to be offensive to. Well, actually, when we lived over in England, it seemed to be okay to be offensive to every race.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah.
Over there from certain groups of English people.
But who in their right mind to be kind of walking up, say, to an Ethiopian, calling back to the Ethiopian famine, going, ha ha, you've got no food, kind of taunting. That's what was happening to Irish people. It was like, ha ha, you love your spuds. And I was like, really? Do you want to start talking about the history of potatoes, and the famine and what they ate? You know,
and slavery as well. Like the whole thing is really washed over about like Irish slaves, indentured slaves, and like it was a big thing. Like there would have been Irish people over in America that were slaves alongside like black people.
I don't think the Irish got treated half as badly.
No, they didn't, because what they did, there was part of it that when they were starting to say,
you could buy your freedom, couldn't you, as an Irish person?
Complicate or kind of like evolve the slavery system over there, that they realised that they had to have other slaves to control the other slaves. So they started doing that with the Irish slaves, where it's like, oh, look, sure, we'll give you a little bit of land if you're a good slave, but you keep all the rest of them in check. And then it kind of progressed on. And so, like, I don't know the whole proper history of, but like there was that kind of aspect to it. But
you were going back to talk about gollywogs.
Oh yeah, the gollywogs. Yeah, with the politically correct, and sure, there was this guy Bernard Manning. I don't know if he's still alive over there. There was a lot of these Roy Chubby Brown.
Oh yeah,
all God. These. I don't even know if they'd allow any of their stuff on YouTube, so I can't even say
old style comics.
But it was like it was just racist. Like it wasn't funny. Like it was just, and it seemed to be there to rile people up and to spread hatred, where it was like a lot about there was an awful lot of stuff about Indian people, Pakistani people over in England, Muslim fate, basically calling like to kill them and that they were savages and animals. And if you look at some of the 70s TV shows over in England, like I think there was I seem to remember that there was like they used the word Sambo. I don't know where that comes from as an insult to black, but it was like a common thing where they'd actually have characters named. They wouldn't call them like Jim or anything like that.
Yeah, just Sambo.
Yeah. So like there was a lot of fucking. And it seems it's all brushed under the carpet now. And these are like, say, BBC, ITV, all these things, like horrific stuff. And I don't think when they said, oh, it was a different time, it was like, no, you made it a fucking different. You made these things acceptable. You things that normal people wouldn't find acceptable. Because even as children, I don't ever remember looking at any of that shit and kind of go, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of go, fucking hell, I remember the first time hearing like Roy Chubby Brown, I was just like, it's misogynistic as well. And you just kind of go, fucking hell.
Yeah, what is wrong with this man?
Yeah, and now like I like dark humour and stuff. I'd be the last person. Yeah, it was just full on hate and racism. There was nothing funny about it and stuff. So when you look at all those things and you compare it to the likes of Tropic Thunder or stuff, you kind of go, yeah, look, Tropic Thunder isn't, you know.
Well, as I said, I do think it was more a commentary on those. You know, it wasn't,
it was.
You know, it's not like fucking being like hate. You know, it absolutely wasn't being hateful or that. You know, it was being very sort of like, as I said, it's just like commenting basically on things that happened.
But that's the whole thing. Where I suppose what we're trying to say is that like I don't think there was ever been a time where blackface was. Good, you know, or accepted by the majority of people. I think there's always a certain group of people, like what I was saying about the gollywogs, that'll try and defend it. Like that when people are saying, hey, look, maybe we should tear down this statue of like, the slave trader and fucking maybe change the name of the street because it's like not something that we want to associate. Glorify, Now, I do think there's part of like don't forget your history at the same point.
That's it. I think
you shouldn't forget the bad
if you
parts
wash
of
over
your history.
Everything, absolutely. I think leave it there. Maybe actually put up a plaque beside it going, "This was
he was
a reminder of our dark history."
Yeah, he was a slave trader, and they did this and they did that. Yeah, like that. It was a dark point in our history. Instead of sure, it was acceptable at the time. It fucking wasn't for the slaves.
I don't think they were too happy about it.
Or actually, like, sure, this just happens. Like, it's grand. Like
going back to the blackface thing, I seem to remember as well Shakespeare's Othello for a long time. The lead character was not played by a black man; it was somebody in blackface. Yeah, sure. There a famous. I don't know. Famous actor. Whereas because that's they talked about that, and It's Always Sunny. Yeah, but even at that, I can remember even as a very young child, and this is again back in rural Ireland where like black people are not very commonplace at all. I can remember seeing that and going, oh, I don't think that's what you should be doing. Even as a kid you realise, no.
It's always the things with people that were in blackface and they look terrifying.
Yeah.
When they're on, it's like Papa Lazaro in the League of Gentlemen. Where he was meant to be terrifying, and that wasn't meant to be like a blackface thing, but I think a lot of people thought that it was afterwards when it was, and they were saying it was just meant to be this fucking grotesque human
creep.
But it's you just it's like, why couldn't you just get a black actor to do it? It's, you know, it's not as if, although then again, I suppose they didn't really, sure, it wasn't Sidney Poitier,
the first,
one of the first for In the Heat of the Night, which is a great movie. As well. He was a great actor as well. So he was fucking very underutilized even after he won the Oscar.
But I suppose as well with, I mean, Tropic Thunder, that wasn't just, you know, I shouldn't be focusing solely on the blackface thing,
no.
basically.
Yeah.
You know, it was mainly a parody, well, I suppose parody of all these sort of like Heart of Darkness, you know, type things.
Yeah.
And, you know, sort of Platoon. I mean, it has, you know, the famous scenes.
I thought there was a lot of,
And they were spot on with it as well, like, you know, sort of the way people are doing and, like, you know, people getting like, oh, I've got to get ripped and cut because I'm going to have my arms out in my uniform kind of thing. And even though I'm portraying like war, I still got to look hot and, you know, all this kind of stuff.
Well, they were saying that the whole thing was apparently with Ben Stiller, he wanted his character to be like Rambo, basically with Stallone. They were taking the piss out of that. It was Jack Black's character was meant to be what's his name? Was it Peter Farrelly? Remember the guy who died of a heart attack and from loads of cocaine?
I know who you're on about. Chris Farley.
Chris Farley, yeah.
There we go.
That was who he was meant to be, and they're all based on real
absolutely
people,
amalgamations of other people.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, I didn't realise. I think Robert Downey Jr. got nominated for an Oscar.
Funny enough for that.
They really pushed. I think there was the character that Tom Cruise played, and it was based on Harvey Weinstein and a guy who was fired by Tom Cruise from some studio just before that.
Yeah.
And the whole character, because they asked Tom Cruise, Ben Stiller was good friends with Tom Cruise, and he asked him did he want to do a thing, and Tom Cruise turned around and he said, what'll break the film up is by you need to have it from the studio's perspective coming into it. So Tom Cruise basically created that whole
the whole thing with
scenario and that character and all the lines in it apparent. Like Tom Cruise, whatever people might think about the Scientology stuff and all that, I know you're not a big fan.
We're a big fan of him, yeah.
I really like Tom Cruise. I think he's a great actor. He's still fucking going. Whatever, like, I mean, I don't see how anyone could be mentally fucking stable from like 40 years in fucking
being
Hollywood.
in Hollywood, yeah.
And being that
big of a star.
He's never like you know, there's you're never going to see him in a straight to video fucking thing.
No, and the thing is, in fairness as well, I'd always have huge respect for him for doing all of his own stunts and stuff like that. Yeah. He's not necessarily willing to ask a stuntman to do something he isn't going to like try. It's only like insurance, I suppose, probably stops him from doing like the real dramatic stuff.
Yeah, like what I've heard about Tom Cruise is that he's apparently a super nice guy, but just
bit mad.
Detached from reality, completely and utterly detached from reality.
Which a lot of famous people are because it's just their life.
There was someone that they were talking about. But they were working on a thing and they met Tom Cruise and they just said to him in passing, "Oh, look, it'd be great if you're hanging around. If you want, come around to our house for dinner anytime. You're more than welcome." Never thinking, why is Tom Cruise going to fucking call around to our house? We're nobodies. We're not famous people or anything like that. That night they got a fucking knock on the door. It was Tom Cruise. And he came in and he sat down and he had dinner with them. They had some of their friends over and they were saying that it was really weird. It was like a robot trying to be human. That he actually said something about like, oh, you and your wives, kind of like, oh, like having sex with the wives. So he was trying to act like he was like what he perceived
normal people to
be and to talk. Right? And then that was probably thinking the guy was probably lonely and he was probably being invited because, like, fuck's sake, if you met Tom Cruise, last thing you do is turn around and say, hey, do you
come around for a dinner.
Yeah.
Well, if you're Irish, would you be like, drop by for a cup of tea there if you're ever passing?
Well, he spent quite a bit of time in Ireland as well. I remember when they were shooting for him and Nicole Kidman. Yeah. They were actually staying down the road from where I used to live. And there was like, people used to think people were fucking nuts because people were saying, tell me, I saw Tom Cruise and fucking Nicole Kidman driving by, and people were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it was like they were down there for I think about 2 months or something like that, in the castle. But Tom Cruise, I always have a soft spot for him. I think he's our generation's, and other generations, John Wayne, except he's not like racist.
Yeah.
That we know of.
Yeah. But I suppose there are so many good characters in the film as well that, like, you know, from the studio point of view, you had Matthew McConaughey as the agent. And,
that was originally going to be played by Ben Stiller. But then he decided he played the main character, and then he asked Owen Wilson if he do. But that was at the period of time where Owen Wilson was after trying to kill himself, so he couldn't do stuff. And at that time, they were blaming, who was also in the movie, was Steve Coogan. And I don't...
That's right.
Yeah, there was like a lot of talk where they were like, oh, Steve Coogan got like... He was a bad influence on all these people getting him drinking too much and doing drugs and all this kind of shit. And it was really weird from over here because Steve Coogan was like Alan Partridge was his main thing.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't heard of Alan Partridge, go and Google it. You'll be very surprised.
So it was this BBC One sitcom actor all of a sudden not hobnobbing with and getting blamed for
the downfall of a Hollywood star.
Yeah, it was just like, what is fucking going on?
His character is hilarious now in fucking the film as well.
He was in very briefly though.
Yeah, I know, but it was a very memorable part in fairness. Like, you know, sort of the shit first time director, and of course, you know, spoilers. That was a horrific scene when Ben Stiller is still in the mindset that everything is make believe and they're still shooting the film, whereas they've actually just been dropped straight in the jungle and he actually steps on a proper landmine, gets blown to bits, and he's there at the head just going, oh yeah, this is great special effects, and everyone else is retching.
But see, that's why I thought, like, after he started licking the bit, like, why intestines fell out of a head, I don't know. But you know, when he started doing that, it's because they're trying to operate in the real world. I think that's where stuff like the Naked Gun and all that goes so well, because it's meant to be in like the real, so you have this reality going on, but like these cartoon characters,
lunatics,
whereas that's not what they were doing. It didn't work, you know, but it was that Zoolander shtick that they were putting into it, and it didn't. Especially when you had Robert Downey Jr.'s character saying, "Look, that guy is fucking dead. He's really dead. This is after happening," and I don't know. It's just. There's a lot of things. I'm still not really a big fan. I think it's good. Well, maybe a film I'd look in about another 10 years, but I think there is a lot of, say, nearly the tropes from Ben Stiller movies and some of the comedy movies that were in it at the time, and even the thing with the booty juice, you know, where it's just like, oh god.
So, some of it was a bit cringy, but that's the thing. I think everyone in the film, I suppose a lot of people in the film, they played true to type and true to character. Like you have like Kenny fucking Powers, what's his face?
Yeah, Danny McBride.
Yeah, like I mean, that's exactly the character from like Hot Rod, and it's exactly his character from like Eastbound and Down. All of these kind of things. It's just he has this kind of character where it's just, you know. But I suppose then again, it kind of it turned that on its head as well when he discovered that the guy who wrote the book and that the film was based on was just a big fat phony, and he's like, oh my god, my whole life.
Nick Nolte. Yeah, I think that would have been around the time that Nick Nolte's career started, because he was arrested. Was it drink driving or something? I don't know. There was a load of them that started.
Yeah, popping up in mugshots and stuff. Yeah,
and that was the things that like people loved about these guys a few years earlier. Like Rip Torn. Rip Torn's fucking one of his mugshots is hilarious because he's just like laughing in it, and he's quite obviously just fucking twisted.
Yeah.
Where it's like these guys, so this is what they grew up, where it's like if you're an actor, it was like being a rock star. This is what you should be doing, going out getting fucking out of your head on fucking drinking drugs and causing mayhem.
That's it, yeah. And sort of like laughing about it, and everyone just goes, oh, there he is up to his antiques again. Oh, it's terrible.
That didn't happen for what was his Ezra, fucking the guy that was in the Flash.
Oh yeah, but that's the thing, everything's changed nowadays. Like, I mean, years ago, and again, I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but I kind of feel like it was more entertaining years ago. People were sort of larger than life. They went off the rails a bit. They went out, they partied too hard, they got caught, you know, sort of falling out of a nightclub when they shouldn't be. And it was just like, it's just, that's, you know, they're living life to excess, let them be kind of a thing. And there was more of a tolerance for that kind of stuff. Whereas nowadays,
that stuff was kind of good. But and like, I mean, we don't mean like fucking. There's a lot of bad stuff, that goes up. But at the same point, it's like, that's your rock stars. Like, we're going to be talking about Bill Hicks next week. And it's like, we grew up in that thing where, and it's like Bill Hicks, I think, said it went fucking 30 years ago now, nearly, where it was like, you want your rock stars to be
Jimi Hendrix. You don't want him to be like Rick Astley, like, you know, prancing around and like,
exactly, and we're New Kids on the Block as well. That was a big, that he had a big piece about. But now every rock star is
so like, sanitized.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we wouldn't do that, we wouldn't. And like, even I feel sorry for there's a whole thing this week with The Rock. Yeah. Where apparently he, what's the word? He said that he'd get behind Biden for the last vote. In 2020. So the whole thing is that The Rock never really came out before and took any political side.
I thought he was saying that since Biden came in, it's after some division.
But that's what he's after saying. That they asked him how it came up was they asked him this time, is there anyone that he that's the word, would he endorse Biden again? And he was like, no, I don't want to endorse anyone. He thought that he didn't want his endorsement to sow political division, and so he didn't want to be a part of politics. He just wanted to have his own thing, and he thought that that's what he was saying. And now people are like, that shithead, how dare he not take a side? Where it's like, but he's probably in a position in the things where he's probably been told by his agents and all this, you cannot take a fucking side, because if you do this,
you'll alienate half your audience.
People won't go and see your movies. We're after putting hundreds of millions into this movie with your fucking name on the front of it. But there must be an awful lot of horrendous pressure on these people. Whereas like years there wasn't that pressure on people, like you had your leading man, like say Gene Hackman and all that, but at the same point was people were more interested in the acting than
the personality
or what his views were and stuff. You weren't going to have people weren't as divided by things, and I think as well that it's you kind of knew
as well people didn't have as much access to sort of, I suppose, superstars kind of like day-to-day spoutings, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, there was that.
Because nowadays, you can connect with them on Twitter or follow them on Facebook and whatever, and every time they fucking so much as fart, it's reported, or and so like years ago there was this era of mystique around, I suppose, actors.
Yeah, but there was still, you knew that there were some people that endorsed like George Bush
NRA
and stuff.
or something like that.
Like fucking what's his name? He was like part of the NRA.
Heston. Charlton Heston. Yeah,
Charlton Heston. But still, at the same point, I would have went and seen some of these films, like Planet of the Apes and stuff. And you just kind of go, all right, look, everyone's entitled to their own fucking political opinions at the end of the day. That's kind of like what comes down to freedom of speech and people having where you can't really discriminate against people for their beliefs. So it works both ways. You can't turn around and say, oh, well, look, they don't have fucking progressive views, so we should shit all over them. I don't think there's that to be gained from that. Like, you just kind of like, the two of us, like, we'll put it out, we're very liberal. But I'm not going to judge anyone harshly because they have different political fucking opinions, or they have a different stance, or they have...
I think they're a bit idiotic now, in fairness.
But like, that should go where you can say that. You have the freedom to say that as well. They have the freedom to kind of think, but like at the same point, I don't think you should not be friends with someone because they have a different, or not kind of like value their work because they have a different political... That was an extreme thing. Where it was like...
Or if it was something that was like very... causing harm, if you know what I mean. Like, say if somebody is like, I think paedophiles are great.
Yeah. If The Rock came out with that in the morning and said, I endorse all paedophiles, and by the way, I'm Hitler. You'd kind of go, I might look at Black Adam too.
That's it, you might necessarily support their actions.
Like but that, people having fucking kind of right or left wing leanings, you have to try and find a middle. That was the way politics and everything used to work. It was like you talk and you try and find a middle ground.
That's it,
with it, instead of just being...
shouting people down. You can't exist and you can't do that.
At the end of the day, who gives a fuck? It's just politics.
It is just politics, but the trouble is, we're not so bad here. Our politicians are fucking shit awful, but if you look in America, there's a lot of rights are being rolled back because of the politicians they're in, so you would be very annoyed at that stage.
The fucking rights are being rolled back with fucking liberals in anyway, it doesn't matter who's in. They're all the same. They are all the same. It's just a different face of a different fucking, it's just, it's heads or tails. It's still the fucking one coin. It's the system is broke.
Yeah, true.
They're all cunts.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
That should be our slogan. They're all cunts.
They're all fucking cunts. Yes. They do not care about you in any shape or form. They just want to stay in and make money.
Yeah, and get a good pension out of it all at the end.
And enslave the human race for the Yanuankai.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pot? No. Anyway, back to Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, Tropic Thunder. And you know who bankrolled that? Hollywood liberals.
Al Qaeda.
Yeah. But it's like, you pretty much think it holds up today. You're a fan. You've always been a fan of Ben Stiller. You're a big fan of Cable Guy.
Yeah, Cable. I like all the stuff that would have been sort of not his usual fare, like the, as I said, Cable Guy. And what was the superhero thing he did? What was that? Oh my god.
Mystery Man,
that's it. That went way by without anyone really paying much attention.
Mystery Man wasn't very good though.
It was just one of these things.
The concept was good, but the actual execution of it wasn't very good at all.
But it was that set of characters as well. Like you had Hank Azaria was in it, wasn't he? And you
had Blue Raja.
Yeah, and you had what's her face?
Janine
Garofalo, yeah. So he had a real unusual cast in it, and he just seemed to have this talent. Like, I mean, Ben Stiller is Ben Stiller in every film. It's just he's the angry guy, basically, like, you know, the kind of the stupid angry guy. But I mean, if you look at who his father is, that's the character that the whole family played.
Well, that was like with Zoolander as well. That was, I think, one of the first where they all worked together. Like his wife, the mother and the father were in it for bits as well, and I think a lot of production people, you know, they had a good. Now Zoolander 2. No,
but that, honestly,
trying to capture lightning in a bottle 20 years later.
I fucking loved that film when it came out, and there's at the time as well. Everyone loves it now, but at the time in Ireland, people did not love it. People thought it was fucking weird. I think
it was a slow burn for it, but even like whether it was, like. You look back at it now and you kind of go, oh, the MTV generation at the time, but it was a very small part of the MTV generation because it was with that fashion thing that it wouldn't really appeal to a certain, like the bigger MTV audience at the time that probably was like, it was going into new metal, I suppose.
Yeah,
you know?
But as you mentioned, I suppose, sort of the MTV generation, like you had all, like Zoolander popped up on MTV Awards, Will Ferrell popped up as the architect out of the Matrix. And
that was, like MTV used to be great. Like it was skits. Fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
And it was a great collection of the culture at the time. And really like what young people were into and set things, but whereas now it's just it's a shame that it went. I think you need stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, it's a kind of, I suppose it's a centralised cultural reference point, whereas I don't think people have that now.
No, it's YouTube, but there's so much difference.
That's
on
the thing.
YouTube,
There's nothing. I think, like, I mean, I know people go on about water cooler moments and all the rest. There's absolutely none of that nowadays, really, unless you're in a kind of a very older generation where people are still just watching TV and they're like, oh, did you see?
I think you might have sometimes with series that get released on Netflix at the start, but or kind of HBO or anything, but it has to be like with New True Detective. There wasn't as much of a thing about
and that was
the first series of True Detective. And by all accounts, the new one with Jodie Foster is meant to be very good.
Yeah.
I suppose
the last big cultural thing probably would have been Game of Thrones, and that was because it was HBO. I can't remember another season. That was kind of the end of it.
There has been with the Marvel stuff, but it hasn't been good. Kind of like cultural things where it's like the whole thing, like with She-Hulk and like the Star Wars stuff as well, with the new Star Wars series.
Well, I'm saying is it doesn't seem to have like the widespread the widespread cash. Like everyone was watching Games of Thrones.
No, yeah.
You know, teenagers, older people, fucking people that would not.
But I think Game of Thrones was one of the last ones that was like on the verge of people switching from TV over
cutting the cable basically. Yeah.
Whereas like, and as well with Game of Thrones, remember they were like really happy that people were downloading it. Remember it said like the first season was like the most downloaded torrent and stuff, and HBO were like, yeah, we don't care just as long as people are looking at it. Which paid off for them, I suppose.
But that's what I mean, like MTV would have been a centralised point for most teenagers who were into their music to kind of watch stuff and see what other teenagers were into, so you had this kind of common ground, I suppose, whereas nowadays, like, no, you don't have that at all.
And it seems to be, there doesn't really seem to be communities anymore because like we're seeing like social media disintegrate, so like Twitter was always a cesspool for like people, like long before Elon Musk bought Twitter. It's just, I think, highlighted it even more so and made it worse, obviously. Facebook is fucking dead.
It's just full of fucking spam and fucking lunacy.
But it always was. You know, you go back in any of it, it's easy to be nostalgic about, say, even like MySpace. But MySpace was a shithole as well at the same point with it. There's never really been any decent social media, but it's just gotten to the point where there's not. Whereas before you had forums, I think forums were when you did have community
online,
and you could have, you know, but now it's I think
so
there's going to be something.
Everything is so fragmented.
Yeah, something's going to come up like forums again. People keep going on about Mastodon and decentralization and stuff, and I think for most people it's a little bit too complicated. But I think that's where it could. It's taken me a while to fucking figure out Mastodon. You know, the way with the different instances, people are saying, "Oh, you can." It's the different instances are basically like fucking forums. Yeah. So it was just someone said, I was looking up a thing about orcs on Reddit, and someone on it said, hey, this instance on Mastodon is really good because it's all about RPGs and war. There's about 2,000 people on it. It's like, so
So you can go for your niche interest again.
That'd be the thing where you can talk to people that'd be a bit, Whereas like Blue Sky joined up with that, it's just too slow. It just keeps, it's really, I don't know, I'd like it, but it's too broken, I think. I don't know, I can't see it taking off. Because I don't understand why it's so slow. Like if you want to change, say, tabs on the top of it, there's a big freeze in it where it's like, fucking hell, you shouldn't have this shit like in an app at this stage. And it's just really hard to operate and get people following you and stuff. It's like, and like people like that, you know, you join up on things like that to make friends or get followers or follow people, and if it's hard to do, you kind of go, fuck
not putting forth the effort, I suppose.
But Tropic Thunder, fucking hell, we've really gone.
I know you've very much veered off kilter there. I suppose another thing, like, I mean, weren't most of the stunts in it, say all the pyro and all the rest, that was actual real pyro as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
You know, again, it was one of the last.
There was a lot of money put into it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of films do the sort of the in-camera effects nowadays.
Very underwhelming though as well as like we were looking at it on 4K last night. Well, it holds up under 4K because a lot of the stuff that when you do look at it,
it has this unreal kind of uncanny valley kind of stuff at times as well. It looks more like a sort of a weird cutscene from a computer game.
It looked really good. It looked like a movie.
Yeah, movie.
Yeah, instead of something shot on a camcorder, which sometimes things look like when you have
things
look
a little bit too real at times. They look like a cheap soap rather than shot on beautiful film like.
But it looks good. The cinematography is good on it. It's an alright movie, but it's just like, can you think of any quotes from it or kind of bits where you were rolling around laughing? Like you fell asleep.
I was knackered though yesterday, but I mean, you have that's
you wouldn't have fallen asleep to Freddy Got Fingered.
I would probably have fallen asleep quicker. You have the whole thing, like, you know, sort of, you never go, I hate having to say it because I know people just hear the one word was like, you never go full retard, and that seems to have been a thing like for a while, but of course you can't, it's not a phrase that is commonplace anymore.
But it's not even funny. You know,
it
like,
isn't.
You look at, like, say, there's some stuff in Hot Rod where it's hard to explain because it's a lot of it slapstick stuff in Hot Rod. And like the slapstick stuff in this, I think, is very coarse, and it's just even like the farting thing where they're taking the piss out of like, oh, Jack Black is his character basically like Eddie Murphy, all that he has is farting and things, and it's like stupid people are that, and then that saves them all at the end, him farting, and it's just you're not actually, you don't
you're
realize,
not rising above it to the extent you think you are.
You're fucking trying to you're trying to say stuff about
you're parodying this, but you're falling into the same tropes yourself.
Because, and like apparently the original cut as well was like 3.5 hours long, and Ben Stiller argued with the studio saying that he could only cut out 20 minutes of it. So even with that, it's like that was the whole thing with fucking Apocalypse Now as well, where he's like, oh, it has to be 6 hours long, and the studio were like, you fucking nuts.
Yes, you're insane.
It's so there was I think they ended up becoming a victim of their own.
Well, that's the thing. As I said, it's not a film that you'd be kind of like, oh my god, it's my favourite film ever, and you know, sort of something that you'd be like, oh yeah, this is so ever. But there are sort of nice little high points, like at the very start, the opening where they're going through, and it's like it's a war film, and then suddenly
it was shot really well.
No, but that's what I mean. It was a nice kind of a turnaround when it, like the camera pans out. And they're kind of like, oh no, stop! He's snotting all over me when he's crying, and it pans back, and it turns around then to the film crew shooting it, and it was actually a bit of a shock jump, if you know what I mean. You're kind of like, you're in the middle of this war film, and all of a sudden it's like, no, cut, no, and Jack Black is still just hanging out of a helicopter by a fucking. Well, I think
this is the thing that Stiller used to be able to do so well, because he had a good understanding of media, and he had a very good understanding of TV and film. You know, that he could actually portray it. But I don't know it's an alright movie, I think. But if it wasn't for the Black thing and going full retard, which they like had a lot of the clips for to get I don't think as many people would have went to see it, because there was just,
and a lot of people went to see it for Tom Cruise as well.
And that was meant to be a secret.
Worst kept secret ever. But that's the thing, as I said, like, I mean, I enjoy it as a Ben Stiller film essentially, because I enjoy characters it's just that goofy sort of like, you know, the angry little man that fucking, you know, has no end to his outrage, but they're the kind of characters I like Dennis Reynolds fucking losing his shit as well.
But would you look at Tropic Thunder again tonight?
No.
If it was
If it was Hot Rod or Zoolander,
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's my thing with it. It's where people are, because like the whole thing that I'm trying to say is like that people are saying, oh, it's the last best comedy. It wasn't.
No, I think it was one of the last comedies that kind of could have that kind of crude humour in it, maybe. Or
I think for a certain generation that they probably look back, younger people, that's probably the way they're, or people that aren't really massive movie fans. There's a lot of really, like I keep talking about Coffee Town. There's great comedies out there. It's just they're harder to find. It's the same as it's always been. Big comedy movies generally aren't going to be funny.
Because they have to be as broad as they can.
It's the independent comedy movies. You find gems in them.
Because it will appeal to your particular sense of humour because that's what they can do.
And they can take the risks with it as well. And you're going to, a lot of times I think with comedy as well, you have people when they're starting off their career, they can't, because like fucking most people, one of the hardest things to do is write jokes out of anything. Like I think stories are easy to come up with. A funny
Action
story
is easy to come up with.
It's very fucking an original funny stuff. Very, very, especially nowadays, because you notice that there's not as many comedy movies coming out as there used to be. I think the 90s is probably fucking a high point.
Peak,
for it. And then even like with Will Ferrell stuff and all that crowd, their things kind of...
Their star has waned a bit, I suppose.
Yeah, but they started repeating themselves too much and it was like the same character a lot. Where you just kind of go, oh...
Yeah, been there, done that kind of thing.
Like Downfall of Chevy Chase and...
That's going to be the next big comedy thing, eh?
I don't know. I would have thought that it would have been the likes of Eric Andre and all that, but that doesn't seem to...
That, again, I think that's too online, if you know what I mean. It doesn't seem to have made... I know it's been broadcast and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem to have jumped the crossover, the threshold, or whatever you want to put it into, like, real life.
Or he had his own film on Netflix. And... I think it was quite funny, but it was just, I don't know, and like, or it's going to be, I'd say it's going to be that Tim Robbins guy, that thing has, I Think You Should Leave Now. I think he's got a film coming out with some, I think he's going to be, there's going to be that kind of, and it'll always be really weird humour that'll start off with, like with Anchorman
kind of thing,
like with Anchorman, Anchorman was a very, very cult thing when it came out. It was the same with Zoolander and a few other bits, like with Ben Stiller, even though Ben Stiller had the Ben Stiller show. But then people, it's going to be something like that that's going to come along and it'll be like anti-comedy. Or be seen as anti-comedy.
Let's watch out for it then.
And Freddy Got Fingered, I'm telling you, it's the best fucking comedy movie ever.
That just goes to show your level of taste.
It's
or
brilliant.
Your level of non-taste.
I fucking guarantee in about 10 years' time that's going to have a big reassessment and people are going to be like, my God.
Doubly horrified.
Can't believe people didn't. The people will be walking around singing sausages. Daddy, would you like some sausage?
I still sing that.
Sausages. But look, I suppose, thank you to everyone for listening today. The whole thing, I suppose we're saying, well, I'm saying Tropic Thunder. Yeah.
You're saying Freddy Got Fingered instead.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm saying Zoolander.
Yeah, but Tropic Thunder, it's all right, but... But thank you for listening to our ramblings today. I suppose, look, if you like the show, subscribe on whatever you're doing. Tell people about us. That's the way you can help the show out if you want. We're not going to get into this whole fucking shit of like, oh, we're on Patreon. Oh, you can follow us on social media, because we're not really on social media at all. So, thank you. And next week, Bill Hicks, if you haven't heard any Bill Hicks or listened to Bill Hicks in a long time, go off and listen to some of his stuff, look at some of his stuff. Just don't forget about Bill Hicks. So, thank you.